you're listening to BusinessFlowShow.com. Let Andrew Roberts and Adam Sowden help you get more flow, freedom, and fulfillment out of your business so you can minimize stress and maximize enjoyment on your business journey.
Hi there, everyone. It's Andrew Roberts here, and welcome to the first episode of the Business Flow Show. Shortly, you'll be joined by Adam Sowden, and together we're bringing you this podcast to help you experience more flow, more freedom, and more fulfillment, not just in your business, but also in your life. In this first episode, we're going to really uncover, what is business flow? We're going to really talk about why both of us argue that business flow these days isn't just something you can consider. We think it's actually a mandatory component to building a successful company and defining the word success, building a great company that brings immense joy, happiness, freedom, and fulfillment into your life. And if you consider and think about why you started a business, the main reason that I find most entrepreneurs and business owners come back to is to experience more freedom, more fulfillment. And it's really interesting because achieving freedom is very different to achieving business success. And so this is a critical topic that we find will bring so much more satisfaction to your life as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. I hope you get an immense and extraordinary amount from this show. We're going to build on this as the weeks move forward. So I'll move over now, and we're straight into the Business Flow Show. And if you'd like to find out more information about myself and Adam, you can do so on BusinessFlowShow.com. And I hope you get a lot out of this. Thanks for joining us.
And look, Adam, before we even dive into, if you like, a high-level overview of experiencing flow, how would you define business flow? How would you define actually what is flow?
Well, to me, flow is the place where my business is growing and I'm developing, and there's personal growth as well as business growth, but it's without the stress. Now, that to me is what flow is. Most people will force a business to grow. They'll push it, and they'll use their sweat in order to grow a business. Whereas the true, like to me, the true definition of flow is growth. Not without, it does require energy, but it's without that effort. So it's business growth that doesn't have a byproduct of stress or angst. Or don't get me wrong, stress does happen in business. I'm not suggesting that you can have, you can be on cloud nine all the time with business, but the foundation of business should be that it gives you fulfillment rather than stress.
Yeah, I mean, I am sitting here listening to that and thinking about what it takes to run a business, and I'm sure you'd agree, Adam, and everyone listening to this, that it's one of the hardest things you're ever going to do. And when you really consider the stuff behind running a business, from learning how to market, to sell, to operations, to finance, to administration, to human resources, to being an IT professional, to a social media expert, to all these different moving parts. If you can appreciate your brains jumping from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and not only that, you've got to have this vision for the future, and then you've got to find this internal motivation to move forward, and then there's so many moving pieces. And so it's really quite obvious as to why flow, I think, is broken. And for me, it's very similar to you. It's how do I make sense of all of this? When it comes to growing a business, how do I put some context around it to ensure that I don't burn out, and to ensure that you absolutely enjoy the journey, and also you're building something that you're born to build instead of something that's maybe an influence from a family member or a friend, or you may have read about Mark Zuckerberg building Facebook and thinking, well, I want to build this billion-dollar company, but deep down, it's not really the business that's true to you. And I think flow is such a broad definition, Adam, of someone being totally true to themselves. So building a business that represents their truth and is not breaking into, as I mentioned, being influenced by others, but at the same token, doing it in a way that's peaceful, that brings freedom and fulfillment, and doing it in a way that manages the stress. Because I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't know about you, but I still experience stress, and I'm very aware of it. But I so want to help entrepreneurs, business owners build this machine, if you like, in a capacity of enjoying the journey at such a higher level than maybe what they are right now.
Yeah, look, because we both work with so many business owners, and the truth is most of them I see are the ones that are going forward. Most of the people who are seeing a lot of growth are also experiencing a lot of stress. The growing pains of starting up a business and moving it through to success. And like I was just talking to a client on the weekend, and she was they've taken their business from $3 million to $9 million in the last 12 months. And the projection for the next 18 months is their business will be around $27 million. But so she's got this excellent growth within the business. But her question to me was, look, the problem I've got is I'm exhausted. And she's a third of the way to where her business is projected to go. She's only a third of the way through it, and she's already exhausted. And so that to me is where, the big problem I see. If most people sacrifice themselves for the growth of their business, they'll sacrifice, they'll put their family behind that. They'll put their relationships, they'll put their business success before family and relationships. And the big one is health as well. So that's a common theme. And that seems to be, in entrepreneurs, it seems to be a socially acceptable thing, or it seems to be the norm, that in order to be successful, you have to pay a personal tax on your stress levels. And you and I both know that it just doesn't have to be that way. If we build our businesses correctly, and if we prioritize, or we do it in a certain way, we can have success without that stress and burnout that we see a lot of in our business environment.
Yeah, and this is really leading into why is this topic so important? And you've started on that, Adam, and just for me to add some things to that, I think it's one of these concepts that entrepreneurs, business owners keep it really quiet, the challenges of running a business. I don't know about you, but it's often many business owners find it hard talking to people about, or their partners or their family, about what's really going on. I think the business owner carries so much extra anxiety and stress around money, around time management, around managing team, around growing the business. I mean, all the stuff you've got to learn just to grow a business today, the changing environment, the changing economy, moving to this digital revolution. And I think people suffer enormously. And a lot of people don't talk up about it a lot. I mean, there's how many podcasts are out there, Adam, that are teaching business growth strategies? And don't get me wrong, they're so important, and I listen to them. But I think there's a real lack of podcasts like this that actually talk about the real challenges that entrepreneurs experience, getting to the core of, why are you really doing this? And if you really think about it, most people are running a business for freedom and fulfillment. Okay, if you really think about it, the reason why most of you went into business is for freedom and fulfillment, yet you'll sacrifice so much freedom, so much fulfillment in order to find it in the future.
And it's just on that point,
something's wrong with that. Yeah.
Totally right. But it's just on that point. Most people are very clear why they started a business, but in getting into the grind of business, they forget that. And I'm guilty of that, and as well, where we get halfway through a project and think, what the hell was I doing this in the first place? I'm just doing now. It's where were we going again? And you're so true. Why did we build the business in the first place? So we could have lifestyle. And the reality of business is that you do have to put a lot of energy into it. But the downside is most people forget. Where were we going again? My wife and I do this all the time. We look at we sit down every quarter and we look at where we've grown our business to, and sometimes we look back at the goals that we had and in the following quarter, like this is what we were working to last quarter, and when we sit down to review it, that's when I realised, that's what we were actually going for. Like in the process of doing, I'd forgotten the destination. So,
it's fascinating, and I think as well. There's a powerful quote, Adam. Before we move into a bit of a high level on looking at, if you like, defining flow in a model space, but Marianne Williamson said this. She said, "Ego says, once everything falls into place, I'll feel peace. Spirit says, find your peace, and then everything will fall in place." And just to say that again, ego says, once everything falls into place, I'll feel peace. Spirit says, find your peace, and then everything falls into place. And I mean, from your learnings and from your decade plus in mentoring business owners, Adam, you see this as much as I do. This concept of experiencing peace and putting energy towards peace. And for me, if you could appreciate, peace and flow are very aligned. When you're in flow, you're experiencing harmony, you're experiencing peace, you're experiencing this feeling of everything's correct, everything's in the right place. And from your knowledge, Adam, what happens when an entrepreneur finally gets this, when they actually understand that, wow, I need to actually look at my life and I need to put these big rocks into my life that brings me more peace. What's the rewards that you notice from that?
Well, this is a really great question, and to be honest, it's the reason why why I'm interested in flow and why I think people are interested in flow, is that when we are in that state, when we are peaceful, growing our business, as you say, and growing it in, when we are running our business with the foundation of flow, there isn't any grind. But the interesting thing is that the business success is exponential. If we're pushing our business, the growth seems to minimize. It's just, I don't know why this is specifically, and I'm sure there's some guru out there who could explain why this is. But when we're stressing and when we're pushing, business growth seems to be minimized. We have these incremental growth. The saying is, you make a millimeter of gain in a million directions when we're stressed and pushing. Whereas when we're in flow, it's the flip side, where we make 1 million millimeters of gain in a single direction. Flow is an effortless way to grow one's business, but to me, it's also the way to maximize results and those, that fulfillment and freedom that we were discussing before.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing as well, I think, what you were saying with Marianne Wilson, the quote, like from a Taoist point of view, you can see someone's success before they start. And I won't go into it in great detail. This is something for further podcasts. But the main principle is where we're coming from determines where we end up. So what I mean by that is, if we're coming from a place of stress, that will impact on our outcome. But if we're coming from a state of peace and flow and pleasure, our outcomes will reflect that. You look at guys like Muhammad Ali, and this guy was, joyful when he went into the ring. He was playing, and that's why his results reflected that. Whereas you see the other guys who are stressed and worried and anxious, etc., and their results will be affected by that as well.
Totally. What I focus on gets bigger, and this is where, as challenging as it is in running a business with all the moving parts and all the pieces that can break flow, it's triply important as a business owner, in my opinion, to work on this topic more than almost any other area to work on, Adam, because of I can guarantee you stress levels are a lot higher for an entrepreneur than what they may be for an employee. And just to put a bit of a model around this, I'd love to just share with everyone, just to appreciate and understand flow as a category, if you like, based on a model that represents 4 areas. And the 4 areas are, number 1, negative spiral, number 2, current reality trap, number 3, stress, and then finally flow. And just to illustrate each of these really briefly, Adam, negative spiral. Now, negative spiral is where your current present happiness is gone. So there's no happiness in the current moment. Plus, you don't have a future vision. Now, I've been in this category before. This is where I experienced an element of bankruptcy when I was younger. Nothing was working in my life. I couldn't get out of bed. Everything felt like depression. It was overwhelmed, and I lost sight of the future. And in fact, I made a decision temporarily to give up because I couldn't see that the stress was so overwhelming, the pressures of the business were so overwhelming, the relationship breakdown, all sorts of things occur. And so many business owners go through this negative spiral. It's a really scary place to be in. And that's the first one. And then the second one is this, I think this is a very dangerous one too, Adam, is the current reality trap. Okay. This is where people are actually really happy in the now, but don't have a future vision. And this is where you'll hear language like, oh, I don't really need more. I'm so content where I'm at. I'm so satisfied with my current level of income, and often there's a bit of denial going on here. It took me a long time to realise that this is denial. And why do you reckon that is, Adam? Why do people fall into this current reality trap, and why is it a danger zone?
Well, firstly, just to comment on that, that's one that I'm very familiar with, the current reality trap. The main reason, so I've done that. Like, I've had a successful business that didn't take that much effort, and it was earning a great income. We didn't really need anything, and as a result, I suppose I got complacent and a little bit lazy. And eventually, the problem with the current reality trap is that if you're not thinking ahead, what happens if you stop marketing? What happens if you stop trying to fill your funnel of leads and prospects, etc.? Is that eventually it goes dry, and the current reality trap, you go from this nice little current reality to one that sucks very quickly. And for me, I thought, where did this come from? I didn't see this coming. And the truth was, it is a trap. But the main reason why I think that is there's a Mihai Csikszentmihalyi who wrote the book on flow. He said, most people, you have a choice. You can seek comfort or enjoyment. Now, I think his words actually were enjoyment versus pleasure. Now, the difference between enjoyment and pleasure is enjoyment increases or helps me grow, whereas pleasure depletes me. So enjoyment feeds me and pleasure depletes me. So sitting on the couch eating chocolate depletes me. Exercise, it might not feel great while I'm doing it, but after a while, you You can get a great endorphin hit from exercise, but it also grows you. And I think business owners in the current reality trap can get very comfortable, and they enjoy it. They've got pleasure in their business, and as a result, it stops growing, or they stop growing. It might not. The business might still be growing, but they won't be, and that is a massive trap.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Adam, a great metaphor that was taught to me. If a tree seedling's planted in the ground, the tree will actually grow until its maximum potential. And nature will create that tree to grow. There will be a period where that tree will go into decline and eventually die. That's the retirement age of the human being. And so nature has a plan to expand and grow us as a human being into our potential. And often the current reality traps where you're blocking that natural flow, that natural growth. So the universe, if you can appreciate, has a plan in order for you to maximize your potential, for you to blossom into your ultimate, your biggest and your best good. And sometimes you can see business owners as getting in the road of that, blocking that. And that's when you start getting pain and suffering because you're going against the natural flow. So that's the current reality trap. And you're right, lots of business owners fall into it. And it's also a bit of a trap because fear might be blocking them, and they may have a fear of being really successful, and they've got the opportunity to go to the next level, but they're avoiding it because they're avoiding the responsibility that next level might bring. So very interesting. And then this third one.
Yep.
Now this is the big one, and the stress. And if you can appreciate, stress is where you're not happy in the now because you've got a big future vision, and you've got in your head, I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
I'll be happy when, just when my business gets to $200,000, or just when this occurs. Now, this is huge. And Adam, I mean, how much do you see this in the entrepreneur world? This stress where present happiness is just low, but they've got a huge vision. And I would say this is probably one of the biggest areas entrepreneurs fall into.
Well, it's not just entrepreneurs, it's everyone. It's like, you see someone who's single and they're like, I'll be happy when I'm single, when I've got a relationship. And you see people who want children, or I'll be happy when I have a child. And, it's always out in the future. There was a Buddhist metaphor of two monks who were meditating on the side of the road. And one guy spoke to his master, and he said to the master, how long until I'm enlightened? And the master said, it's going to take you 10,000 lifetimes. And he said, oh, no. And he kept on meditating. And the next monk asked the same question, how long until I'm enlightened? And the monk said, the master said, it'll take you 10,000 lifetimes. And he said, fantastic, that's great, 10,000 lifetimes. And he became enlightened really quickly. The point being, you're either delaying your gratification or your pleasure till you achieve something, or you are enjoying the path while you're achieving it. And that is, for me, it's especially for guys like you and I who it's just a non-negotiable in business. I must have that pleasure. Otherwise, for me, it's a key KPI, which I don't actually see many business owners having. How much should I enjoy this as something that they actually measure within their business, and to their detriment.
Yeah, and it's almost like we're all after happiness. That's the reason we went into business, for peace of mind, more happiness, more freedom, more fulfillment. Yet we'll come back to this at the end as a call to action or some things to think about. But how many people actually set the goal or focus and set the intention to build more happiness in their lives in the next 90 days, Adam? It's quite a fascinating concept that we delay. You've hit the nail on the head. We delay happiness for the future. That this podcast is going to open you up and give you permission that you don't have to do that. You can have the happiness now and the growth. In fact, the more happiness you can build into the now, the more peace of mind you can build into the now, the faster the results will come into your life. And we're gonna really go into this in future episodes. And this is the last one. This is the last one, Adam, which is flow. The last quadrant, flow, is where you're extremely happy in the now, and you've also got a future vision. And the reason you have the future vision is to move you forward, is to move you on a direction, to give you some, if you can appreciate some direction, to enable you to grow towards. It's setting that vision, it's setting the future, but then bringing your energy back to the now. And do you have a story or anything at all that you could share just to illustrate what happens in that flow zone?
Well, I do actually, and when you asked that question, I thought, I don't know, you put me on the spot there, but I do have a story that illustrates this perfectly. I was putting together a project a number of years ago, and I put a lot of pressure. I was in that state of stress. I was building stress throughout the project, and there was a workshop that I was putting together, and we were marketing it, etc. And I was talking to a very good friend of mine, and to be honest, my mindset was I was basically going, I hope I've got everything right, and hope this works. And so there was so the happiness was based on whether it was successful or not. So it was that state of I'll be happy when I was in that stress quadrant you were talking about a moment ago. But she said this really cool thing that just completely changed my approach. She said, Adam, it doesn't sound like you've got much wiggle in it. And I said, what do you mean by wiggle? And she said, well, it doesn't sound like you're having fun here. It doesn't sound like you're enjoying the process. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of fun. And this lady, Angela, she's a Buddhist monk and a very, very successful business owner herself. But her whole premise is you've got to. It's not about business. It's, in her case, it's about the service and enlightenment. But she said this, you don't have doesn't sound like you've got a lot of wiggle. And so I changed. It struck a chord with me because I know this, and I'm sure all business owners know this. Often we know what's true, but doing it is a different is a different thing. But so I changed it. Every day I would just have a little smiley face put up on my whiteboard. So the main, instead of it being numbers and projects up on the whiteboard, half of the whiteboard was a big smiley face, so that it reminded me that the key thing was to come from a place of enjoyment and pleasure. And the truth was, the project was going south. It wasn't working when I was in stress, and the flipping into having some wiggle, as Angela calls it, but just being in pleasurable, like enjoying the process. I didn't care about the outcome so much, and as a result, it's I don't know whether people could fathom this, but it's the first time I've run a workshop, and my conversion in the workshop was beyond 100%. So everyone in the room decided to do some business with me, but they also, every one of them, invited friends that I spoke to, and it was just one of those uncanny things that I've never seen this happen, and I doubt it'll ever happen again. But it was the perfect illustration of flow, from stress to just simply adding pleasure to the process, and exponential results that I just couldn't have believed were possible. And I still, I doubt that it'll ever happen again. But flow and wiggle and to smile is crucial.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, the story that I've got was when I was pushing really hard and I was tired. And I think when you're working hard as in a business owner, and you can fall out of balance easily. When you're out of balance, I don't know about you, Adam, but I sacrifice my health. I just, because I'm exhausted, I exercise less, I eat more yucky food. And so I'm just feeling off. And this was going on for months. And eventually another mate of mine suggested, why don't I give myself permission to go over to Bali and do this Ayurvedic retreat? We'll talk about this in a future episode as well.
Yeah.
And I'm like, mate, I'm not going so well at the moment. My cash flow's a bit tight. I can't afford that. And he just said to me, I reckon you benefit from it. And I'm like, my thinking's, no, I've got to work harder because, I'm not performing as well as I could in my business. Anyway, a few more conversations with this guy, I gave in. Off I went to this retreat in Bali. And I was very reluctant to go over and do this. And I had to be, very open-minded to do this. It was like a 3-day detox and then really looking after my body for a week. And Adam, I got over there and I was sleeping 16 hours a day. I was so exhausted. And I actually did it was a 10-day retreat, and I got to about days 7, 8, 9, 10, and I just started smiling again, similar to you. I just felt a bit like a kid. I felt rested, I felt cleansed, and I got this energy back. So I got this excitement about the future. The first time I'd felt it in honestly years, and this playfulness. And I got back to Australia, and it's an absolutely true story that following 2 weeks, I generated more income than the previous 12 months. I was on fire. And the reason it occurred was I was in flow. It was just, I was so happy. I was so excited, and I was giving off, we're going to go into this as well, Adam, this vibration of excitement, of enthusiasm, of youthfulness. And the results were attracted to me. I think when you're not in flow, when you're pushing, you're actually quite unattractive. And I feel when you're in,
that,
yeah.
Sorry, I was just thinking that because if anyone, knowing you, you've got that infectious enthusiasm, and it makes people. It is magnetic, and I'm sure. Anyone who knows you knows that when you do business with Robbo, it is enthusiastic, it is exciting, it is fun, and that to me, I suppose it's just my observation from what you've just said is, to me, that's who you are. That's the guy I've always known, and when we're socialising, it's always fun. And but what happens? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but in business we forget who we are. That joy and, that true nature, for lack of another word, gets kind of clouded. And, so your trip to Bali, you kind of just came back to Robbo and who you are. And as a result, it is magnetic. It's not some, fluffy cloud thing. It is, if you're enthusiastic, people are attracted to you. You've got that kind of confidence that people want to do business with.
Yeah. And for me, on that, once you recognize that it is so important to stay in flow, once you see the benefits of it, Adam, you start planning for it. You start building your calendar to schedule things that build more flow. And on that note, just to move towards summarising, what is one thing that you could suggest our listeners could do if you had to make maybe one suggestion to find more flow in their lives, like a piece of homework or something that they could action as a result of this discussion? What would you suggest when it comes to finding more flow?
Okay, the one thing I would suggest, I think it's the first thing. If your business isn't in flow, then the first thing I would suggest is what we call a come to Jesus conversation. Now, the come to Jesus conversation is simply where we just sit down with either by ourselves or with someone we can be incredibly honest with, and just have an honest conversation with ourselves as to why am I in business? What is the essential thing I want to get out of it? Because when we get, and it has to be clear, like the clearer we are on what we're there for, the more we can prioritize that. And so if you know what you have your metrics, have your goals and targets, but it's like, why am I in business? What is the single essential thing? If I've got a list of 10, let's come back to one. Like, what is the essential thing? The more essential our thinking is, I find the more we're in flow. That's my tip. Is sit down. Yeah. If you're not in flow, find what's essential in your business, and you can start to plan to have more of that essential thing occur in your business.
Yeah. And for my one thing is, what's one thing that you used to do that brought you playfulness, enjoyment, and fun that you stopped doing because you're too busy? And how can you restart that? What's one thing that you used to do that used to bring you enjoyment, fun, laughter, just that the purpose of life, right? Happiness. And then and maybe you've sacrificed it because you're in business and you're too busy, but how can you restart that?
That's fantastic. That'll help people reset back to reset back to why they're in there in the first place, isn't it? Well, it gets us out of process and back to the point of business, which is brilliant.
Well, really, also the point of life, right? The point of life is to enjoy, have more fun and more experience. And I think I think there's a myth that we're going to really. Adam and I have an intention to completely de-root this myth, which is I have to sacrifice in order to have a great business. I used to think that. I don't anymore. I think in the early days you may have to go slightly out of balance. We'll talk about that in a future episode. But just to recap, Adam, on this particular episode, again, we have a mission to bring a podcast that's going to help you gain more flow, more freedom, more fulfillment in your business and your life. We highly recommend you come back to watch and listen to our future episodes. We're going to go deep into this topic, and we're really going to expand on this over the course of the oncoming years. And I know for a fact we're going to help you achieve those three areas. But please also share this podcast with other business owners. We're really here to give back. This is our way to pass on something that we've both been through from over 20 years between us, 25 years between us in business, to share our learnings from not just our own businesses, but working with literally hundreds and thousands of entrepreneurs, business owners. So, Adam, do you have any closing thoughts before we sign off?
No, look, I just think that, the key thing from today that's jumped out at me is that flow in business is not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not something that's negotiable in business. It's crucial to success. That's the one thing that I've got from our conversation today is that whenever I've had significantly successful moments in my business, it's been from a state of flow. And some people think I'd love flow in my business, but the priority is hitting my targets. And the truth is, from what we've discussed today, flow is the target, and the byproduct of that is success.
Bingo. It is. Thank you. So we'll leave it there. We'll see you on the next episode.